So Brent Bruning, you make hand analysis, and you've had some famous superstar clients like Beyonce, Keira Knightley, Richard Branson, you name it. So could you tell me more about this analysis of yours?
Yes, so everybody, if you look down at your hands, you're looking at a neurological pattern. It is a pattern that is developed around 7 weeks as a fetus. So after your parents had a really good night, about 7 weeks later, you're a fetus and your hand is mirroring your brain's development. So when you're looking around at everyone's different hands, essentially what you're seeing is different people's sensory cortex, which means that you're not just sitting at home in a Zoom session or a television session, you're actually experiencing reality. And that reality is broadcast on many different levels: gravity, on the sensation of information, evaluation, heat. All of that is coming live to you in order to create this thing called reality. If you were to expand per square millimeter the number of sensory neurons of your sensory cortex, which they have discovered is the personality, then you would go, okay, so where is the sensory cortex? And if your lips would be like the size of a basketball and your hands would be as big as us. They're huge, and that is why I'm reading the hands, because they broadcast everything that's neurological in your life, which means that when I'm looking down at these lines, I'm seeing an epigenetic ancestral history of stress and transgenerational trauma patterns that come several hundred years, called epigenetic, meaning that they were a short-term stress evolutionarily. Talking about a lifetime stress, but short-term in an evolution. And those create epigenetic impressions called fingerprints. And you can imagine if you were 7 weeks and you get the stimulation saying, be careful here, but be amazing here. Then wherever you're amazing, you're developing a big volar pad. If you know your biology, you look like you got a gecko fingers. And those big balls are areas where if you slice them open, what you got? They're stem cells. So what you're seeing is the absolute way in which you get turned on. And it's not just something to believe, it's a reality that everyone experiences. You may have heard people get able to boost their immune system by doing something creative. For another person, they don't have a creative bone in their body, so don't ask. Other people are in a love story. Other people, not so much in the love story, they're more in the service story. So what you're seeing is a neurological appetite for certain experiences, or you could say neurotransmitters that function in a different way based on the fingerprint patterns. And if you have a big ball in a particular finger at 7 weeks and you put skin over it, it's like a rug over a bowling ball. Eventually that bowling ball disappears and you can see that there once was a ball there, and that is a circle that you see on your fingers. So when I look down at your hands, I can see absolutely you get turned on, you must do this, and you will complain every day of your life if you're not doing this. And what I was doing for the reason why I got people like Keira and Beyonce and Richard Branson and Eminem is I was taking their handprints, and without any knowledge, because I was skeptical, because most people don't have a paradigm that this is a real thing. But Google dermatoglyphic patterns in health, you'll see a lot of it. But what I was doing is I was taking the handprints, and with no knowledge, I was giving it to 2 people that were curating and trying to get me to go be a master hand analyst. Those guys had read 70,000 hands and 30,000 hands. I've read at least 26,000 at this point. And I would give them a handprint. They didn't know where I'd been to a hairdresser, and they would look at, for example, Eminem, and they would go, wow, this guy is really temperamental, and he's got a very short fuse, and he's got a high trigger for disrespect, and he's got a circle on his right ring finger, which means that his appetite neurologically is to create art, otherwise it's going to kill him. And so all this shows up in the interview when I meet these celebrities, and if you know one, I'd be very happy to meet them, and just so I can test this. But what I'm doing is to help create a big evidence-based kind of reality show for people to feel validated that anybody with your fingerprints can go along that path. And when I finally announced to the Institute, you know who you're reading for? It's not a hairdresser. It's definitely a guy that you say is a temperamental rap star. You're reading for Eminem. And I'm looking at them and they go, who's Eminem? Guy's 70 years old. He doesn't know who Eminem is. But what's fascinating is that we can guess not only through the architecture, somebody is a film director and that's their calling if they're happy, but the kind of films that they're making. And I tested them several times. Overall, I did 200 people. Ultimately, I published the book, The Power in Your Hands, and I'm at the biohacking conference right now, not to sell the book, but to help people hack their body, to understand that there is a zone of genius that you can see like that. It takes me, people are wearing buttons all around to show their power. And it takes me about 2 minutes for me to look and see, wow, you are really gifted in this area, as well as you completely shut down. Why is that important? This is not esoteric. Your whole immunity shuts down through a fight, flight, freeze response. The longer you're in it, you start to go into a neurological chronic inflammation and chronic stress, which means you age. And so what I'm seeing right now through the hands, and I'm presenting, is the before-after photos of people who have taken this wisdom and look noticeably younger, about 10 years younger. And why they look younger is because I took that stress pattern and said, step right into it, right into the fire, and figure out how to handle that so it doesn't become the story of your life. See, some people have real difficult stories of being able to say no in a relationship. Other people always seem to attract a narcissist. Other people always have money issues. That is a neurological pattern. It's not bad luck. It is something where you just switch off with math, and you've been doing it since fractions. So the value of this work is that while it has been largely dismissed as hand reading, and I'm not a palmist or a hand reader, it has created a wonderful opportunity for the frontiers of science to be able to understand that dermodynamic patterns have a massive say in your life pattern. And if you look at twins separated from birth, and they find out that they have a twin, and they live this extraordinary similar life, like the Jim twins who both had Chevrolets when they found out through the adoption papers that they have a twin, and they both have jobs in law enforcement, and they both married a woman named Linda and divorced her around the same time and remarried a woman named Betty, and both their sons are named James Allen, and they both have jobs in law enforcement, and they both went to the same stock car rallies. And you're going, I don't even know anyone who does any three of those in a row. But that is a biological pattern. While you don't have a twin to compare to, you have me. I can look at your biological pattern and can tell you there is something that you seem to be called and propelled, and it's natural for you to do that. And if you're not doing it, then I would say to that level, you're shut down and you're blaming everybody else that you can't live the life you want. And my purpose is not only to help people reverse their age, but to liberate people from these patterns so that they live a life they love and they live that powerfully.
Oh, this is amazing. When you look at my hands, what can you see?
Well, the very first thing we have is, can you raise your hand to the camera? You see how short those fingers are? That, copy and paste that into the hand, that we have a much more innovative, pioneering woman. And that is her architecture of her personality. The skin is very soft, so she's a little bit like Gwen Stefani. So there's a little bit of, I can say anything I want because I'm me. And then you have a heart line that is developed at a certain point before you can bend your hands as a fetus. It's developed when you develop a facial expression. And so here we have someone, when it goes up to the middle finger, then that's somebody who is very me-ish. Here it's going over the index finger, you-ish, meaning that you're very empathetic and you put other needs ahead of your own. Now add that to the fact that if we look at your fingerprints, you can see that at around 7 weeks, there was a pattern of you being in a need for love and creativity, being in the spotlight, of course.
In need and not having it, do you mean that?
that is a need, the need. It doesn't mean what you do in this life, you can be a small tax adjuster and it doesn't matter. And there's a lot of restlessness in your family, and where one part wants to go one direction and another part wants to go another. As a result, women with your hands have a high degree of separation and divorce rate, high.
Oh.
And may I look at your other?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're gonna get divorced, I'm just saying you have a high, low threshold for conflict. And as a result, that creates a restless pattern in you of what am I going to do? And do I need to be here? Should I be in Finland? Should I be somewhere else?
Oh yeah, I
got to travel.
Recognize that, yes.
And there's a little bit of blueness there, which means that when there's a blue, there's a lack of circulation in that particular region, which is, if you like your life now, let's say the area of sensual fun and celebration needs an upgrade there.
Okay.
So I can go on and on and on, but you start to see that we start putting this together into a matrix of 12 areas, including the lines in your hands, the fingerprints. You're going to see where you get triggered, how often you get triggered, who you act like when you're triggered, your shadow side, and I'll then give you a tool of how you break out of it so you quit annoying your parents and your spouse, and hopefully you're a more treasure to be around when I show you how to hack your nervous system so that you're in a more empathetic growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset.
So how would I hack my system in order to not to be so restless and be more stable, have more fun?
It's the same way that you would say, well, to an alcoholic, how do I stop drinking? You're addicted to this, and it's part of a life you know. And if you just walk by the bar to the alcoholic, it's reasonable if he's had a stressful day to have one or two. So the way that alcoholic stops is he sees the impact of living a life this way, and I'll create maybe a disaster scenario for you of what it likes to be in the shadow, and you give me a percentage of what it is, and I will show you how you act, which I won't do here. But when you're in that place, you can then put a percentage, and that's good, because if it's a life pattern and it's a percentage, then it's reasonable that if you're going to be in a life pattern next week, if you're say 50% in your shadow side, we get to see you 50% at least 3 of the next 7 days acting like you do, and you get to see that. Now add that to 10 years and see 5 of the next year, 10 years. When you do that, and then everyone loves these things in California called vision boards and affirmation boards. That does nothing. What you need to understand is that you cannot mentally create a lot of affirmations to get out of it. The way you get out of it is you have to go into the shadow by going in and creating a shadow board. And in the shadow board, you create an entire life movie of you being in this really demoted way of living. And then at some point, you just go, if I just continue this way and it doesn't change, this is what it's going to look like, obviously, for the next 10 to 20 years. That is a process I'll call the shift. And when people shift, they immediately get it. And there's a part of their nervous system that they've been thinking it's their father or their partner, when it's actually them. They can't deal with their anger. They can't handle their sadness. And when they get connected to that, and they realize that's just really what they're rebelling is themselves, an integration begins to happen, and their whole sensory cortex opens up, and you have these smiley, joyful, rejuvenated faces. And then I say, great, go do that. They create a big vision board then, but from a new place of a foundation where they're whole and complete, not trying to convince themselves, not try to match this law of attraction, but to actually anchor themselves in that future because they earned it and they got the lesson from everything that's happened. I don't care what your history is. And then they go on to become famous. And they go on to make millions. They got a guy who was stuck as a doctor, and now he had all this dream to start his company, and I have another person who was stuck in the back office of Swiss Airlines in administration. And not that it's wrong, but her life purpose said she should be an artist. And so when she got that, I said, you also have a fear of confrontation. Deal with that in your life. And then she goes on a hero's journey for 3 months to reclaim everywhere where she lost power. So she sits everybody down and says, look, there's something that's really been bugging me. I've been afraid of making you angry. And then piece by piece, the entire life story begins to emerge as she's found herself and she's coming back to life. And at that point, she ends up blossoming in her life, and all that energy that she's been using against talking to people and shutting down and complaining, all that energy is now being used for a fruitful life purpose. And she becomes Priya Raghu, who becomes this rap star singer who is also on the Bahnhof of Zurich and with a big face, and you would look at that face on that Bahnhof, on that big building, and she's representing a perfume ad. And if you saw her face before she shifted, and I even told her, you are going to represent a perfume. You would not think that woman in any way would be a voice for the feminine movement. But now, if you look at her, she looks like she deserves it. And so that's what happens, is there's a purpose that everyone here in this collective consciousness that we have, we all have a role to blossom and be the best version of ourselves. And you got to get past your shadow side. And I invite you then to live 3 months on a hero's journey to live the life you love, and you live it powerfully. You give me your vision board, and then in exchange for me coaching and getting on you on a regular basis, you get that life. And that's what people get through this. It's not just coaching or affirmation. It's really, you need to surround your life with evidence. And when you wake up one day as an artist, now you have all the evidence you need.
Yeah. Did you see my life purpose here on my hand? Or is it like a more complicated thing to find out? Or is it just like you take a look and then you say, okay, this is what it is?
Yeah, what I would look at as I was tooling through your hands is I saw a lot of love and connection. So relationships and connection to other people and having a family connection to them, as well as having time to spend on your own and being a world success, building something up that never happened before, and doing that over and over until you have 1,000 projects this lifetime and you love it. So I would say you're the master of manifestation, building up a project in love, and hopefully you're in a relationship where you can constantly open up your heart to somebody and have that nourishment, because you run on oxytocin and you need hugs, sex and kisses, all of that produces oxytocin as often as possible. And that nourishes your system in order to create the results that you need to manifest.
I'm really touched. I have a tear in my eye now. Like, you can see that. Now, okay, people watching our show might be thinking, okay, how do I start if I want to go through that journey? How do they get in contact with you? Do you do online coaching? How does it work in practice?
The absolute simplest thing is you book a hand analysis at thepowerinyourhands.com. So you go to thepowerinyourhands.com and immediately you'll see the diagram that we create of your life pattern. In that, as soon as you book, you choose a place on the calendar, and then we'll give you instructions on how to go outside and send photos of your hands and your thumb and your face. You're like, well, why do we need your face? Because I want you to see what you look like now before I transform you. Yeah. So I put that all together into a diagram, and then we'll even take a photo of your face as I put you in your shadow side during the hand analysis. And then I'll show you what your face looks like when you break through it. And then I'll invite you to go and shift it. And there you go in through a 3-session process, and it only is 3 sessions to break through your entire life pattern. 3 sessions, and you break through that, and then you come to a vision, and then I invite you afterwards to come join me on the hero's journey. And that's a 3-month process. So they're different products. You can stop any point if you're just curious about your life and your life pattern. Just book a hand analysis and be happy with that. But most people, when we say if you understand your potential and that to the degree you're not living it, as a degree you're not fulfilled, and you're probably going to get sick if you're over 50% in your shadow, because that is a sick way to live. That's a stressy way to live. Then if I can reduce that to a healthy 10 to 15%, because I'm not going to get rid of stress in your life or your sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, they're here to stay. But I can help you reduce that. And I've had people from everywhere from the oncology department. So I've got a doctor, 2 doctors referring people who have been stuck in creating long-term difficulties in their life. And traditional psychotherapy, talking for 3 years to a psychotherapist, doesn't seem to work. And neither does throwing medicine loosely at the problem seem to work. If you have a architecture in you that's thriving to come out and you don't do it, you will get sick. And you'll feel that life is boring and unfulfilling, and then you'll go into a place where cancer loves, where dreams and songs are not sung. And if you go into a hypertension where I'm trying to do everything and I'm giving up the rest of my nervous system, you're gonna have a heart attack. So there's a Zen place that I'm helping you find that helps you live a life you love.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for the interview, Brent.
You're welcome. They're great questions.
Thank you. This is something I'm looking at in the evening and listen to my heart and look at my shadows and see what comes up.
The best place if you want my biggest trick to be able to break through your shadow is goodwill. So the shadow exists in judgment. And that's the area we judge ourselves as well as society judges us for. And if you can have an attitude of goodwill to the anger inside you and the shame and the judgment you have, then you can begin practicing that same goodwill on the other people that are angry and judgmental towards you. And out of that, you can then begin to have crucial conversations to reclaim the relationship with your mother and father and have a life you love. So it's a healing. It's absolutely a healing, and it brings a untapped resource where everyone thinks that they can do yoga and exercise and medicine and vitamins, and you'll not understand when you look at those before-after photos of the people who finally cleared up a 2-decade long relationship issue with their brother, how that nourishes their soul, and they become to a state of health and longevity that they haven't seen.
This is what we all need, nourishing and healing of our souls. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.